You are on, sir.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to this program of the Library Subcommittee of the Bengal Club. This evening, we're going to have a little evening with a difference, considering that the last time we had a program of the Library Subcommittee, we were in very serious discussion about the world at large with one of our Nobel laureates. This is an evening when we are going to discuss Citius Altius Fortius, which of course is the Latin for faster, higher, and stronger, the motto of the modern Olympics. And we're going to start off by discussing about the Olympics with three of our very special guests today. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to this program two very, very special people, the President of the Indian Olympic Association and also the President of the Indian Hockey Federation, Dr. Narendra Batra, who is a proper doctor, not one like me. Welcome to this program, Dr. Batra. And also a very special person joining us from the stadium in Ahmedabad, the President of the Athletic Federation of India, who must deserve some credit because he's won a gold medal, if not by himself, but at least under his banner. And that is Mr. Adil Sumariwala. Welcome to this program, Mr. Sumariwala. And last but not the least, and I introduce him last only because he's a member of this club, and in keeping with our traditions, we sort of welcome our own members last. And of course, the member that I'm going to welcome is the man who's made this evening possible, a man who's can be best described as a sports journalist, an academician, an author, and more recently, even a TV anchor. I think he does everything except brain surgery. And this man is a DPhil, probably the only DPhil in social history of Indian cricket from the University of Oxford. He's a Rhodes Scholar. And of course, he's none other than Professor Boria Majumdar. Welcome to this program, Boria. Okay, without much ado, let's get down to talking a little bit about the recently concluded Olympics that we've witnessed in Tokyo. And two Olympics have been witnessed in Tokyo, and we'll talk about both of them. Let's talk about the conventional Olympics first, and I'm going to talk about the Paralympics later on. The first thing to kick off with, and I think appropriately it should be addressed to Mr. Batra. What has changed, Mr. Batra, in your perception as far as India's participation in Olympics is concerned?
First of all, good evening and thank you for inviting me here, Mr. Sandip Chatterjee, sir. So you mentioned me as a real doctor. I think that's an overstatement. I'm just a normal person like everyone else. So I know about your capabilities and everything. So thank you very much. Now you mentioned about what actually has changed. I would say I've been involved at national level sports since 2009. Before that, I wasn't part of the national level, whatever the setup is. For last 4 or 5 years, I should say, we have now gone much too into detailing actually. We follow each and every athlete who comes into our elite system. It's not that we cover all the sports. Right now, we were focusing on the potential sports where we felt that we had medal hopefuls and we were likely to qualify in the Olympics. So we've been monitoring them, tracking them for last 4 years, how they are performing, whether they are improving, whether they are not improving, what are their requirements, whether it is fitness, whether it is diet, whether it is their biomechanics. So I think it's a joint effort of national sports federations, Sports Authority of India, Government of India, I would say even the STOPS program, which was launched later on, where you could send the best athletes to whichever facilities or wherever they wanted to go. and IOA doing the overall coordination job. I think this is what ultimately resulted in what we are seeing, a coordinated effort. And I think you will see better results coming from here on, because things I would say a benchmark has been set, or a system has been put in place, which now needs to be followed and implemented from here on.
So you think there are more medals for us in store in the next Olympics?
Definitely. I think what I was expecting, we fell short of that, but that's not an excuse. Now we got whatever the medals we won, as the maximum India has won till now in Olympics 7. But here on, I would see now India in Paris. I don't mean to be boasting or talking big, but I don't see any reason why India should not be touching a number of 20 from Paris and onwards. I don't see any reason why we should not do that. We have reached those levels, and we have those kind of backup facilities and people with us who are quite capable of getting those results.
Perhaps we should get Mr. Sumariwala in here, because really speaking, I'm an ignorant person about what's going on in the world of athletics in this country. But we really didn't expect a golden javelin. I mean, the average common Indian, that's myself, did not expect that we would get a gold medal in javelin throw of all things, because somehow that's something we never thought that we were particularly good in this country. How did you manage that?
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. It's a privilege to be on this panel with Dr. Batra, Dr. Majumdar. No, I also did not expect a gold, to be very, very honest. We expected a medal. We did not know what color that would be. But the gold was absolutely delightful to be a gold, because when you somebody like me who's a very process oriented guy and who looks into processes and systems, and he looks at the data that was available. With the data that was available, we were pretty sure that Neeraj would get a medal. Color of the medal was unknown, but gold was an absolute bonus and delightful for not only the Athletics Federation, but for the whole country.
Tell me one other thing. Tell us a little bit about Neeraj. How did he achieve this?
So, today, if you look around the place, if you say federation, it's a bad word. All federations are bad, federations are corrupt, federations are chore, federations go on free trips to the Olympic Games. That's the normal that people think. It's actually not true. And there are good federations, there are not so good federations. But to paint everybody with the same brush, we started a inter-district program 17 years ago. It was started in the time when Mr. Kalmadi was the then president of the Athletics Federation of India, and Dr. Bhanot was the secretary. And we really, in the last, this is my third term as president, and we really pushed this program in the last few years. And if you see Hima Das, if you see Duti Chand, if you see Neeraj, if you see Vismaya, you see any of these athletes, they are all part of our inter-district program, where we go right down to districts. At the last inter-district program, 500 districts took part. Now, my job was to put into place processes and systems. When we started the inter-district program, there were 90 districts that took part. Today I'm talking to 650 districts, and I'm talking to each one of those districts. So it's been a process, and I am not happy discussing medals. I know you all pressurize Dr. Batra to tell you how many medals, but I believe that if you put systems and processes in place, medals will happen. We missed one medal. Nobody talks about the medal we missed so closely in discus throw. And if it hadn't rained, Kamalpreet would have got us a medal. So there have been 2 medals in athletics. So if you look at the junior world championship happened just after the Olympic game. And we had, again, within the system and processes, Indians are not all suited for all events. So we said we focused on 400-meter relay, we focused on walk, and we focused on javelin throw. Javelin throw, we got an Olympic medal. We got a silver in the bronze in the relay and a silver in the walk at the World Championships. So it will happen. It takes time. It's not like a factory. You put in something at one end and a finished product comes out at the other end. It's a 12 to 15 year process. And if you can hold on to that process, if you can strengthen the process, I think in every, look at hockey. Hockey's work. I mean, Mr. Batra, Dr. Batra sitting right here is my president. I mean, the amount of work hockey's put in the last 5-7 years or even more, I don't know for how long, and that's finally brought us to where it has brought us, both men and women. When have women ever come to this stage? Yes, men have got a bronze, is great. I mean, we are sad that they missed out narrowly on a better medal, but look at the women. The women also narrowly missed out on their bronze. And I mean, for women to come even to this stage. So if you follow systems and processes, everything will happen. And I'm a firm believer of that.
Just while we are on the subject of Neeraj, Boria, you were there. Take us through those final moments of that javelin throw.
I mean, I'll actually start from the end. Firstly, thank you for having me and discussing the book. Dr. Batra and Adil were very much part of the process while I was writing. But to take you to that evening, and there's a pre-story. I keep saying that every story has a backstory. Now, I'll actually start with, so Neeraj comes in, and because there were no crowds allowed, hardly about 15 Indians in the stands, some media, some officials, some athletes. So we were about 10 meters away from the podium, 10, maybe 15. So just where we were standing, and by the way, Adil actually gave the medal. So Adil walks along with Neeraj, goes inside, and Neeraj stands there on the podium. And a couple of journalist friends of mine stand next to me. And we are actually talking to Neeraj from the podium. So somebody says to him, Neeraj, Bharat Mata ki. And the IOC man is actually going to give him the medal, and he says, Jai. And he's like completely stunned. What's going on here? So somebody else says something, and he responds from the podium. Standing on top of that podium, he's responding to us. That's when I told Adil, I said, tell Neeraj, we've got to do the interview straight after. We were actually conversing. We were chatting. And during the prize distribution, sorry, the press conference that the International Olympic Committee organizes, there were about 100 odd IOC officials, journalists, etc. Firstly, when that first throw happened, 87.03, each one of us realized a medal's coming. Because Johannes Vetter, maybe because of the heat, maybe because of the track, wasn't looking the Johannes Vetter that we know. And obviously after the third throw, he was out of it. So Neeraj makes it. Before even the last throw, we knew that it's coming. And by that time, the whole stadium, and there were about 200-300 journalists right there, each one knew something was going on. Each one was coming and giving us a fist bump. We were celebrating. Then Neeraj takes the victory lap. Each one of us with some, wherever we managed an Indian flag, we got that. It was unreal. And then he comes to that press conference, and he's asked 100 questions. So he looks at me and says, "Sir, English mein nahi bol paunga, aap translate kar do." I said, okay. So all kinds of questions are asked at Neeraj. And he's looking at me, I'm looking at him. So we keep translating in Hindi. Finally, one fellow from Norway said, so how did you win the medal? And I translated it to Neeraj and said, yaar ye pooch raha hai, how did you win the medal? And what does this medal mean to you? Exactly these two questions. So he too looks at me for 10 seconds. He looks at the medal like this and he says, sir, ho gaya? And ye sab kuch hai. And I said, he's answering, it's happened. And this medal means the world to him. That is what it was. And then obviously the Prime Minister calls, the madness happens. I don't know if Adil and Dr. Batra were there, but we kept celebrating because we were doing interviews and all. And around midnight, this was about 10:30, 11 o'clock in Tokyo. Around midnight, a tornado hit the stadium, the city. For 3.5 hours, it was raining like anything. I finally went back to my hotel at 5 a.m. in the morning, completely drenched. And there was nobody in the stadium when we were still there celebrating Neeraj Chopra. It was a night like no other. The country came alive. Sport came alive. Today, his brand value is 2.5 crores, which is second to Virat Kohli. So cricket finally has some kind of competition. You have brands emerging out of athletics from Olympic sport. That's great to see. You will see more. And in every sense, with that medal, and we had two that night, Bajrang and Neeraj, it had made our Olympics. Because I'm too tired, coming forth. I'm tired of that lament, 130 crore people, 1 medal, 2 medals. Arey, kya ho raha hai? Ki hoche? Why is this happening? I'm tired of that rhetoric. This was my 5th Olympics. And finally, I can tell you, with systems and structures in place, thanks to people like Dr. Batra and Adil, we can actually dream of 15 plus in Paris. We can dream of 20 in this Paralympics. The count has started. And like if you see Tora, 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 that famous dialogue, you've awakened a sleeping lion, now you can't. So it's exactly that. India is like that. I don't think there's any stopping this country.
Fantastic. I'm going to take a chapter out of Boria's book while you are there. We'll come to the book in a few minutes. But, his chapter 11 of his book says the national game, and the word national is in inverted commas. And of course, he goes on then to tell us the role that hockey played as a national sport in the early life of independent India. Somewhere that changed because people like Boria became cricket fanatics. How did you manage to get hockey back on the tracks? And Dr. Batra, you're probably the most qualified person to answer this question. How did you get hockey back on the tracks? And do you think that it can again become a national game?
See, hockey anyway is a de facto national game, though it's not defined as a national game in our constitution or whichever way it is defined. But de facto, we do consider it. See, when I took over hockey in 2009, well, it's the same thing where we were from, I think, 1980 onwards. The systems which we changed, the first thing which we took over and we decided to do was, we have a very strong process defined by Sports Authority of India, which I am insisting on changing, but somehow it has changed, that the president of the federation is always chairman of the selection committee, which I think is totally unfair, because you have presidents who are politicians, you have presidents who are bureaucrats, who have no idea about the sports. How will they be chairing the selection committee? I don't understand. So these powers were given to the chief coach. That's how it happens all over the world. Because the chief coach or the head coach is the one who is always answerable whether you perform or you don't perform. I cannot be taking credit for selectioning, and if something goes wrong, blame the coach. I think that's very unfair. So that was the first change we did, and then we focused on fitness. I think skills India is very good, very great. You don't need to learn from anyone. So fitness and diet were two things which were very important, because हमारे यहाँ पे there's a thing that परोठे खा लो, मक्खन खा लो, घी खा लो. It doesn't work like that. Nowadays, your diet is even monitored to a level that what you eat so that your reflexes on the field are not slow. What food you eat, which creates that kind of things in the body on that day that your reflexes are not slow, because as a goalkeeper, you need to be reacting to every single thing and every single move. So ये सब चीजें plan out करते हुए, initially it was difficult. The other thing we did was that there was some kind of a zonal or regional kind of a divide. Then we changed that no two people from same state can sleep or share the same bed. I'm to the same room. It has to be north with west, west with south, south with east. So that team building came over, and now I can probably say that I feel that they feel they are Indians and they are not from any ABC state. I find it very painful when states announce that I am giving awards to people from Haryana, I think I respect Uttar Pradesh and Odisha for giving awards to everyone, but that is how it should be. So these are the few changes we did, and then we monitored everyone. There are a lot of things which need to be monitored, parameters, fitness, everything. And then finally, it's up to the athletes to deliver on that day. I think they all supported us, because without athlete support, you can't achieve all these results. They understood, they supported. And I think that is what brought all these results, that the feeling that has developed that what you are doing is for the country, and things which have now, I think, you can say movies or certain things which build that kind of spirit, that what a soldier does at the border, you are doing in the sports field for the country, bringing honors to them and all this. So this kind of fervor and feeling was in the team, and they wanted to go back with some honors for the country. I kept on meeting them regularly in Tokyo. Even they lost first match. I think they lost to Australia 7-0. But how they bounced back. And if they had met Australia in the finals, you could have seen a different story. I won't be surprised if that was. So a lot of things have gone with support of everyone, I would say. Again, I would say the National Sports Federation, Sports Authority of India, and the athletes all combined together. This is where we have reached. It's not a single-handed effort. I can only suggest things, people will come. It's not only one person, I think it's 100 people, even though I'm being given credit for it, but there are many, many, many people behind it.
So things are changing, Mr. Somariwala. You know, we always thought at one point of time in our lives that normally we have chairmen of the swimming councils are people who've never got into the water or can swim. And chairmen of athletic federations were people who've never run 20 meters, let alone 100. But that clearly is changing. And I think you guys are a reflection of that. So what do you think is the way ahead? How can we make things better for us in terms of our representation in the Olympics by the time we get to France?
So I just want to add to what Dr. Batra said. For example, the Indian Athletic Association, the chairman of the selection committee, has always been an Olympian for the last 20 years. Always been an Olympian. The selection, I don't sit on the selection committee. I'm only an ex officio without a vote. Our selection committee is only Olympians, medalists, Asian or Commonwealth or Arjuna awardees. And these are the things that matter. These are the things which are important. We federations have to become more transparent. Those that are not, we at our general body meeting, we even invite the press to come and sit in our general body meeting, which goes on for 2 days. We have an executive committee meeting coming up because Dr. Batra has the IOA meeting. I have to postpone my executive committee meeting by a day, but the agenda has 22 items, and every item has got to do with sports, promotion of sports, betterment of sports, development of sports, competition of sports. We run something like 20 national level competitions locally every year. You need competition at the right time. You need to work with government and have your camps at the right time. In 2015, the government set up a Mission Olympic cell where both Dr. Batra and I sit on, and all the monies that are sanctioned for the top scheme or for the Olympics or whatever is part of that. So if Mirabai Chanu was overnight sent, we had an emergency meeting at 5 o'clock in the evening and put her on a flight at midnight, because if she had not gone on that flight, she would have, because of COVID, she would not have been able to enter US. So there has been proactive work from federations, from the government, from Sports Authority of India. And I think one of the most important reasons, as Dr. Batra was mentioning, it is the teamwork. There's no need to congratulate me. I'm a very small cog in that wheel. It's the teamwork that happened. Everybody within the federation, whether it was doctors, physios, coaches, managers, whether it was in Sports Authority of India, who were monitoring the performance of these athletes along with us, who worked with us shoulder to shoulder, who did all the financing and funding. So if we can work as a team, I think we can do wonders. Normally we were working in opposite directions. There was turf war, there was control issues. So I'm
just
think
going to interrupt you 1 minute, Mr. Sumariwala. You talk about all this happening. What about funding? Do we have enough funding? Do we have enough funding that we need?
We have enough and more funding. The government is really funding everybody for anything and everything. And both Dr. Batra and I sit on that Mission Olympic cell, which does the funding. Nobody needs a single rupee more. We fund every single thing an athlete wants. There are people who are funding 5 lakhs of, if you saw, I put out a tweet saying we spent 7 crores on Neeraj. People spend 5 lakhs and then claim to be their sponsors, which is complete rubbish. And Boria knows exactly what I'm talking about, and he's smiling away. He's waiting to jump in, I can see. But
we'll get him to jump in a minute. He likes jumping in.
But Doc, as the government is actually supporting the see, government does not give a federation a single rupee, but the government funds my athletes. Whatever I ask for is funded by the government.
And how much funding do you get from the private sector?
We get very little funding from the private sector because we are not cricket. But now things are changing. The gold medal has suddenly changed. There are lots of people approaching us saying, oh, we want to be your agents. We want to do this. We want to do that. I just got off a call with a foreign company saying we want to come in. I said, okay, I'll put out a tender. You guys come. So we get very little, and that is what is the problem. I am very disappointed with the private sector. And what I mean is the private sector, I'm not talking about people like Orissa or whatever that has supported Dr. Batra, but pure private sector, private firms, which would spend any amount of money to get a logo on a bat or somebody's helmet or a t-shirt or whatever. But things are changing, as Boria said. Today, the value of Neeraj is very, very good. So I believe, I want to say one more thing. I believe government should set up infrastructure. Private sector should fund the sport. And that is that combination, when it happens, I think the country succeeds.
We'll bring Boria in because he's obviously the guy responsible for all the private sector giving money for cricket. So, Boria, how can you get the private sector out of cricket and into athletics?
Keep losing like Leeds. Simple answer. Keep losing like Leeds. Get all out for 78. Get all out for 100. Don't worry. Everybody will go to Olympics and Neeraj and the others. But
we're getting pretty good at that, you know.
Exactly. So that's one way. But on a more serious note, I think, performances matter. Ultimately, that's what matters. Why did hockey lose out? 1975, we won the World Cup in hockey, right? 1983 Cricket World Cup happened, and that's when television came in. There is a direct correlation between television sport, consuming sport on TV, and see, because 1982 Asian Games, you lost 1-7 to Pakistan. That's what you consumed on TV. And 1983 cricket happened. All of a sudden, the whole game changed. All of that, because you've not seen Dhyan Chand, you've seen Kapil Dev. You've not seen, even 1975, you've not seen that Ajit Pal Singh team, but you've seen Kapil Dev. Thereafter, you've seen 2011 Mahendra Singh Dhoni. 2008, your country did not even qualify for the Beijing Olympic Games in hockey. The only time we did not qualify. So if you really see, there is a very strong correlation between what we consume on television and nationalism, because and you cannot avoid that. So more Neeraj Chopras. Today he's commanding 2.5 crores. Bajrang Punia 1.5 crores. Somebody comes and tells me Bajrang Punia is a great talker. No, he's not. But that's not what people pay for. People are going to pay if there are performances. And I think the way the women's hockey team is being celebrated, Dr. Batra deserves credit. Adil deserves credit. The media deserves credit. The media highlighted. Look at what's happening with the Para Games. Every athlete, the political class deserves credit. I've got nothing to do with politics, by the way. The Prime Minister calling every athlete, the Sports Ministry getting behind it, national TV, live telecast happening on multiple platforms. Every medal is being celebrated. Like, when has it happened? You did not even show Paralympics in Rio. There was no live telecast. You did not win a single medal in Beijing. You won one in London with HN Girisha. You won 4 in Rio. Today you are on 13, and I'm predicting 18 to 19. Cumulative medals between 1968, when India first participated, and Rio is 12. Today you are already on 13. You've beaten your cumulative number with this para games. A revolution is on its way. No one can stop it. And I can see that with athletics. You can see a Shaili Singh. You can see a Neeraj Chopra. What's their age? Shaili Singh is 17, 3 Olympic cycles. Neeraj Chopra, 23, will peak in Paris. Look at what Dr. Batra has done with hockey. You know what their yo-yo test score is? 22, 23. That's the kind of sort of fitness that these people have, the hockey guys. The girls have yo-yo scores of 19 and 20. They train for 8 hours. The whole thing has changed. This is a different India, which is speaking out to the world. And that's what I love to document. You know what I hate? I hate this word jugaad. When Devendra Jhajaria went to the Paralympic Games in 2004, his father was the only person at the airport who told him, "Agar tu jeetega to badlav aayega, agar tu nahi jeetega, kuch nahi hoga." He went there, he won a gold medal in 2004. And he comes and tells me, "Sir, वो चाइनीज ना उनके पास थेराबैंड था, हमारे पास तो थेराबैंड वगैरह कुछ था नहीं, मुझे पता ही नहीं था कि ये क्या है." तो मैंने उनसे पूछा ये है क्या. So they had come with sports scientists, with nutritionists, with physiotherapists, with everybody, and here was I with a 300 rupee javelin and a 400 rupee spike. That's all I had. So I saw the TheraBand and they explained to me, it helps my shoulder, strengthens it and all. Now, मैं तो सर फार्मर का बेटा था, मैं आके एक कुल्हाड़ी ले लिया और मैं पेड़ काटना शुरू कर दिया. मैं दिन में 500 बार करता था, मेरा shoulder strengthened हो गया, मैं Olympic gold medal जीत गया. Now, this is the Indian story. This will result in one Abhinav Bindra, one Devendra Jhajaria, one Narendra Batra. I don't want this. I do not want this. I want systems in place like in United States. That's where academics and sport needs to come together. That's where a D1 like the United States has to happen. That's when systemic change will happen. Otherwise, you will have these athletes, like Neeraj said. Are you satisfied with one gold? I'm not. I want 25 medals in Paris. I want 50 Paralympic medals in Paris. And that can happen. That can absolutely be a reality, is what I believe in. So we need to do more. You guys need to do more. Everybody who's putting out a tweet and celebrating a para athlete, according to me, is doing a service to this country.
So while all three of you are there, and before we go on to Boria's book, because we'll otherwise run out of time, I want to ask you a question. Do you think, in places like the United States, one thing that strikes you is that if you're an athlete or if you're a sports person, it helps you get into university because that gives you points. And therefore, if you're a good swimmer, you can get into a good college. If you're a brilliant swimmer, you can get into an Ivy League college. But here, everything depends on marks and exams, and we still do not have any recognition for sports performance from our school children to our universities in terms of what they can do in future. Do you think you guys can change that?
The question is to whom, sir?
All three of you.
No, I'll say sorry. Yes, Boria, please.
Sir, आप शुरू करो.
नहीं, मेरा इसमें ये कहना था कि there are quotas for sports people in government colleges, government universities, yes. But I think it's time private also woke up to it, whether it is schools or whether it is colleges, that there is some reservation for sports quotas in everywhere where I think the government...
I'll just interrupt you, Dr. Batra. I'm not talking about reservation. That's not a nice word in India. Everything is reserved. But what about saying that if you are a swimming champion in the school, you get an extra 20 marks in your total marks in the school leaving exams? Why don't we do that? Why can't we do that?
No, I think that has already happened. I think it started in Madhya Pradesh, and what I understand from the way PM was addressing and the things that are happening, that in definitely Government of India institutions, because education is a state subject, so it depends on every state to follow. Sports is going to become part of curriculum. When you say marks, yes, they will be added to your final results of whatever it comes. That is happening in Government of India institutions, yes. In states, it's difficult for me to comment, but Madhya Pradesh, I think, has already implemented or is in process of implementing. And we will certainly be taking up with other states. I have already started talking to Odisha and maybe Uttar Pradesh and few states that if they can also take it up, it encourages athletes to then, means if they are losing out on subject A, then they add it on from the sports side.
Mr. Sumariwala?
Dr. Batra is right. It's happening. Maharashtra has been happening for many years now. It's not a large amount, amount of percentage. I think you get like a 5% more. But I think the new education policy which has come out, and if you study it in detail, that is the way the government's new education policy shows the way where sports becomes quite integral in the education system. And that will be a game changer, according to me.
See, I'll add to that. I mean, if India has to become a multi-sporting nation, if we have to have, I mean, take a look at which university, or rather which institution has the best facilities in the United Kingdom. It's Loughborough University. Having taught in the United Kingdom, having taught in Canada, having taught in the US, we've seen what kind of facilities there are. It's not happening yet. I've been part of UGC committees, and the first thing I said was, the education ministry has to talk to the sports ministry. There has to be dialogue. If there is dialogue, and by the way, UGC has enough and more money to spend on sport. Enough and more money. Absolutely. Unfortunately, some of that money has never been spent. That's where real revolution happens. So I think this is the most important question. If India is able to go down that route, and it has to happen, because if you do not, then you will never win 100 medals. You will always be, okay, I'm happy with 10. You really want change? You want to be a sporting powerhouse? That's where you've got to get to. I think the education policy, as Adil said, having read that multiple times, and I think sport is finally being given its due. Look, when we were in school, socially useful productive work, SUPW, it was our bunk class. A physical education teacher was always looked down upon compared to a maths teacher. America changed the terminology to kinesiology from sport. Why? Because the physical education teacher was always looked down upon. So that's what the culture is. In Presidency College, then college, now university, the games secretary was a friend. And there was this quota which we used to get from Eden Gardens for tickets. So he always handled that. So the number of tickets he got, and one time I asked him, अरे यार तेरे को पता है कितना 3 स्टंप होता है, कितना बेल होता है, तू टिकट बांट रहा है, तेरे को तो स्पोर्ट्स का कुछ पता ही नहीं है, मुझे ये बता 3 स्टंप है, कितना बेल होता है? He said, क्यों 3 स्टंप 3 बेल? So that is how sport and education was, and this is a fact. There were 2 people. I mean, look, if you really do, we consume cricket? No, we don't. There are two crows and 2 dogs and 2 cats when a Ranji Trophy match is played. IPL is a spectacle. We in India consume spectacles. We do not consume sport. Sorry to say, we do not consume cricket. We might say we are a cricket-loving nation. That's the biggest rubbish. Look at what is happening in the United Kingdom at this point in time, 30,000 people watching test match cricket. When is the last time you've seen a test match in India full? Even Sachin's retirement test match was not full. Not full. We consume IPL. Neeraj has made athletics a spectacle. Now India loves its javelin. Paralympics, 20 medals. It has become a spectacle. I've got no problems with that. That is why I want medal winners. The Prime Minister making calls has added to this. The number of cash awards today. Somebody says, "Yeah, IPL खेल के 2 crore मिलेगा, but अगर Paralympics में, Olympics में मुझे medal मिलता है, even 4th position आता है यार, मैं 5 crore कमा लूँगा." That is an aspirational tale. This country believes in such tales. The moment there are more stories like Neeraj Chopra, like Rani Rampal, like Bajrang Punia, like Lovelina Borgohain, you will see things change. Lovelina's house did not even have a pakka road. The moment she got a medal, the Assam government made a pakka road leading to her house because they knew that the media would come and cover it. That is the real story of India. Whether you like it or not, India is unique, and we've got to tap into that potential because we have the power, we have the ability.
Okay, before we go to Boria's book, as a neurosurgeon, I cannot but help ask you a question. What's the reason why we perform better in Paralympics than we perform in Olympics?
This is important. This is an important question because, and a question that I've actually thought about for a fairly long time. And if you also see, while we are saying that we are performing very well in Paralympics, and we are, even that threshold is fairly underdone. By the way, there are 22 sports in Tokyo. India is participating in 9. We are not even participating in half. So like Dr. Batra was talking about, if India participated in fencing, in cycling, in 15 sports, this medal count of 18 would have gone up to 50. Okay, number one. And if you see, there are certain sports where you are winning medals in bulk. Like in badminton, you will win 5, 6. In athletics, you will win 7, 8, 10. So it's not as if there is a sporting revolution happening. There are these little enclaves, little pockets where India is doing very well in the Paralympics. We need to do that in the Olympics. Dr. Batra alluded to it, but let's push that point a bit more. In hockey, however much you play well, you will play 8 matches for 1 medal. That's what you will win. Yes, it's a national game. It will resurrect India's spirit and all. 1 medal after 8 games, 8 matches. Right through the tournament, 1 medal. Fencing, 22 medals. Cycling, 25 medals. United Kingdom is the model to answer you. 1996, they had 1 gold medal at the Atlanta Games. 97 lottery funding came in, equivalent to our top scheme. 97 lottery funding came in. 2012 London Games, 30 gold medals, 29. Rio, 30 gold medals. This time, another similar number. Why? Because they had adopted these 5, 6 sports, exactly like the way our para people have done. And now look at where the United Kingdom is. If what Dr. Batra said is done, 5, 6 sports. And the second thing that we have to stop, and here the private sector is at fault. We have to stop celebrating only medalists. They have enough and more money. Today, you give 20 lakhs to Neeraj Chopra. It doesn't make any difference to Neeraj Chopra's life. He's already earned more than enough that he needs. He's got enough and more funding. You want to support? Go give the grassroots. The government is already doing its bit. The private sector wants to support. If the private sector joins hands and supports the grassroots and stops only celebrating the medalists, I think there will be a revolution in this country.
Okay, let's get you in, Dr. Batra. Answer my question. Why do we do better in Paralympics than in Olympics? And I'm going to just tell you one thing. Do you think as you can well understand, I deal with some people with physical disabilities. I think to have a physical disability and get into sports, you need a very, very, very strong mindset. And I think your commitment, just simply that you've taken sports, is already way more than your able-bodied colleague who does sports. Do you think that's the answer why our Paralympians perform better?
I'll take both differently actually, but I see para also the way things have been shaping up in last 3-4 years, and also the normal Olympics, the Summer Olympics and the Paralympics both. Para, like you said, that they're only participating in 9 out of 22 sports, but I know they were focusing on where they had their focus. They knew where they were going to achieve, and there were certainties, and that's what Boria was getting into, that they focused and they are delivering. In Summer Olympics also, we participated in total 18 events. That's my area of concern, which I may not be talking now in detail, but later on, maybe sometime, should we shape up for future. That Olympics should not be an event where you just go for participation or for exposure. Your exposure or participation can be your international events where you go, practice, come back. When you come to Olympics or Asian Games or World Cup, these are not events where you go for exposure. This is where you go to win. If we are going to send people who we know that they are already in the world ranking at 35 or 40, is there a purpose sending them? Do we need to send them? Para, I think, was not working on those lines. They were working on their records, that where are they placed and where I've been in touch with Para, the President Deepa Malik, and she was always confident of touching a figure of around 15.
15, exactly.
And I was also always saying we'll touch double figure, but somehow we failed. But they achieved. They had a focus, and because they were focusing on limited number of federations, though they participated in 9, but I think their more focus was on 4 or 5 or 6. That's where they were focusing. So that was a proper, perfect focus, and the monitoring was very proper. And that's how we need in the other Olympics also. This is where I think the role of how the NSFs are functioning, because IOA job or whether the Paralympic job is of a postman. We don't prepare the athletes. We are just a coordinating body where we get inputs from hockey that these are our athletes, these are our athletes. We face a lot of problems on whether it is physios or these things, but these problems can be addressed later on. So my thing is there was much more concentrated focus by the para bodies, whosoever are managing it, whether it is table tennis or whether it was gymnastics or whether it is horse riding or archery or whichever way, whether it was athletics, wherever they formed, there was a very serious focus over there. Like Adil said that they were confident, they were focusing on Neeraj Chopra. And I met Neeraj was training for quite some time in Bhubaneswar. I met him there. He came back from his practice session in real hot weather, but he never left it. He did all his practice. I met him at the lunchtime when he reached the hotel. We were in the same hotel. You know, his commitment, he was not watching TV. He was off WhatsApp. He was off SMS. He was off newspapers, just focusing on what he has to do. If that is his target, he was focusing on it. That's the kind of commitment and focus we require. How many do it? See, the result is seen now, ended in a gold. So these are the kind of commitments we need if we are looking for better results. And that's when I'll conclude by saying that I found para totally focused on where they were focusing, and the events where we are getting the medals are actually what was being told to me. And I also have in mind that this is where we will achieve, but somehow in some we failed. That can be.
So we can actually learn some lessons from our Paralympic colleagues.
I have learned. So I'll certainly be means taking it as a lesson and implementing in my course, which I'm going to be taking from 3 years. If I get elected in December till the 24 Olympics, so I'll certainly be taking on, because one is never too old to learn, and I have realized what are the things that need corrections, and if God gives me time, I'll certainly make sure those corrections happen and the results and things improve.
We do indeed hope that God gives you time, and I'm sure God will, and I hope we will see a fantastic performance in Paris. Just before I get into Boria's book, and please stay with us for the discussion on Boria's book. I'm going to end by asking you a slightly controversial question, which has surfaced in this morning's national newspapers quite a lot. And that's the issue of personal coaches. What is your view about athletes choosing to have a personal coach instead of the national coach? And we've seen it in some sports.
See, I'll tell you, you'll have to understand one thing. In athletics, there will be, Adil is there, he'll be a better judge to me say later on. There can be 50 disciplines or 30 disciplines. So each athlete wanting a personal coach, fine, give them, absolutely no problem. And each athlete can get a medal. So we get 30 medals, absolutely no problem. You need to understand that if there are 50 athletes in Olympics, you are only allowed 1/3 of your athlete representation as your support staff. So if there are 15, so that means 50, then that means you're only allowed 15 or 16 people. Now 15, 16 mean your coach, your physio, your masseur, your whatever fitness expert, whichever people you can see. Now out of 50 athletes, whose do you pick? That is where the problem comes in. It's very easy for athletes to criticize that IOA is irresponsible. Fine, I am irresponsible. I have no problem in listening to whatever you say. But these are the facts. This is where the federations have to decide. Now, there will be a national coach who has to look after everyone. Everyone cannot have a personal masseur. Everyone cannot have a personal physio. So when it comes for 50 athletes, only 15 people. So you need to choose out of their paraphernalia of 150 people. You need to only take 15. So these are not easy judgments. If everything happens well, everybody takes the credit. If things go wrong, then the president of the federation takes the blame, and that's how it's going on. That's how it's going on. So that's how it is.
Adil, do you want to make any comment on this before we?
I just want to add to what Mr. Batra says. Sometimes these personal coaches are either husbands, boyfriends, wives. Yes, you're laughing, but it's a fact. It's happened. And I can give you 6 names: parents, mothers, fathers, who are being taken there as in the name of personal coaches. Mr. Batra and we are both laughing because I can ramble out 25 names right away. But I don't want to do it in a public forum because I love my athletes and I don't want to do it. But it's a fact. And why? The question is why? because the coaches of athletes who win medals get gratification and awards from the government. So now they are so this thing about money, nothing wrong with being greedy about money, because these athletes, a lot of them need the money, that they now want the coaches' money also to come to them. So this is a whole load of humbug. A lot of it is humbug. And as Dr. Batra said, we have only 1/3 quota. In that you need physios. There's male and female. You need masseurs, male and female. You need coaches, male and female. One has to understand. Then in athletics, there are 50 events. So the guy who's a national coach for jumps would naturally have to be there, because a lot of the athletes, so if there are 3 jumpers, 2 are in the national camp, 1 is maybe not in the national camp, but the one who's not in the national camp wants his father to come. I mean, this Olympics wanted his father to come. In the last Olympics, 2 husbands wanted to come as the coaches. So this nonsense has to stop. And the media plays this up. It's a story. See, when they have no other story, when everything is fine, so they want to play up these stories. It's humbug. It's absolutely humbug. There are good federations who will never send anybody extra except for hockey, athletics. These are the people who've been training them. This is the people in the national camp. These are the physios they need. These are the masseurs you need. You need performance. This is what it is. The rest is all hogwash.
Point taken, Mr. Sumariwala.
I'll actually sort of contradict that to a degree. I mean, some federations are not all.
No, I said
again, that's where some of the story, like Dr. Batra and I mean, again, all 3 of us know this is not a forum where we will name and shame anyone, but we know that the athlete who's talking about personal coach, today's papers, Dr. Chatterjee, you alluded to it, that particular federation actually, and Dr. Batra knows this, that particular federation allowed an official to travel who is a federation official, whose accreditation was done way before the athletes and others. And maybe that federation could have done it better. Maybe one more coach or somebody else's coach, but one more coach or physio or sports scientist or somebody could have traveled. Tell me one thing. Even this Paralympics, all of this will go down. People won't talk about it because it's a great Paralympics. Even the officials who have traveled, I would suggest we need to go and check every accreditation. We are even this one, the current Paralympics, the management at the very top needs to be asked why certain people have traveled. And again, I mean, I'm actually itching to give names, which I will not today. Dr. Batra knows where I'm headed. Photograph clicking, shopping, doing rubbish, putting out music videos is the tone and tenor of these particular officials. And unless that stops in this country, it will always remain a problem.
Possibly you had some officials who loved sushi, Boria. You have to give them, excuse them.
You didn't get too much sushi this time.
Yeah,
too much lockdown.
I'm going to talk about this book in the next few minutes that we have. And that is this fantastic book called Dreams of a Billion, India and the Olympic Games, whose author is with us. Dr. Batra, Mr. Sumariwala, thank you very much, but don't go away yet, because you would like your inputs into this book. And Boria, I'm going to just ask you, I mean, quite a lot of what you said we've already discussed in the course of this evening, but I'm just going to start off with your very first chapter, 3 Wonder Women and the Yearnings of a Billion. I mean, this is a very interesting way to start a book on the Olympics. And I just want you to tell our audience about these 3 Wonder Women in brief, in your immaculately brief and composite style.
You know, I'll sort of be anecdotal here, because this book is also about storytelling. And let's take PV Sindhu, because she's one of the ones I describe, and she's one of the central characters of this book. Now, I've actually seen Sindhu evolve as an athlete. I've seen the troubles she's gone through, the problems she's had, the period with Gopi, now the post-Gopi period, if I can say it that way. To win 2 medals coming out of India isn't easy. To deal with lockdown and then go and win another medal isn't easy. I mean, when I think of Sindhu, I mean, the fact that Adil just said, Dr. Batra said about Neeraj not checking WhatsApp, 9 months. 9 months at the age of 22, no phone, no food except sports science directed food, no biryani, no ice cream, no cheat day, nothing. You know, these are difficult things for an athlete to do. And when an athlete comes through all of that, and I'll give you one example. So, and this is a Gopi Sindhu example, which I love. Sindhu was one of those athletes who wasn't expressive. So if anybody's been to Gopi's academy in Hyderabad, there are 7 different courts there. So Gopi takes Sindhu to the court when no one's there, 7 different courts. So you can imagine how big that place is. So he asks her to stand in the middle of one court and says, shout. And Sindhu's like, what? And he says, shout. And eventually Sindhu, and he goes on, shout, 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 shout. And then Sindhu breaks down in tears as to what is he doing to me. And she screams saying, I can't do this. And he tells her, this is what I want you to do. When Carolina Marines shouts at you, you've got to shout back. You cannot be quiet and take it all, because that's how psychologically your opponents will come at you. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. When a Mary Kom, I mean, another incredible athlete. Think about it. I mean, mother of 4 and all of that. And this is India, by the way. I mean, Mary Kom, when I asked her in London, so Mary, you won a medal. This was the next day. And her first reaction was, sir, hame na rice cooker lane diya, unhone na extra luggage charge nahi kiya. And I was like, what? And I called her for an interview. And all of this is true. I called her for an interview. And she said, 15 minute baad phone karenge. I said, kyun? So she said, aaj bhai nahi aaya hai. बच्चे लोगों को स्कूल भेजना है, बर्तन धो रहा हूं, उसके बाद आप फोन करो, इंटरव्यू कर लेते हैं. This is India. This is the story of India. And Neeraj Chopra, you know, also, I mean, again, think about it. And Neeraj Chopra, when he goes through surgery, and Adil Sumariwala handholds him. Deepa Malik. Now, a lot of people are watching this broadcast. Dr. Chatterjee, you are a neurosurgeon. You will understand this better than many.
Yeah, I was actually going to Boria just to take you to Deepa Malik, because as you can well imagine, if a young girl has a spinal tumor and is not treated while her husband is serving the country in the army in Kargil, which if I'm not wrong, is the story of Deepa Malik, which I gathered from reading your book. I knew about her spinal tumor. I didn't know that her husband was serving in Kargil at that time when she was diagnosed, which was the reason for her delay in treatment and everything else that followed. It's a pathetic story for a country that claims to be independent for, 70 plus years.
And she was told, doodh haldi pee lo. She was told, doodh haldi pee lo, to diagnose that to treat that spinal tumor. Now, if I ask everybody who's watching this broadcast, can we please stand up? We'll stand up. Can we please walk a couple of steps and come and sit down again? We'll do it. So when Deepa Malik was told by the doctors that, do you have any last wish before you go in? Because whether you will live or not, none of us know. And she said, please, can I walk into the operation theater? And the doctor was like, what? She said, yeah, because this is the last time I'm going to walk in my life. Because paralysis, and she keeps telling me that, I'm paralyzed, I'm delighted. And I'm like, what are you talking? She said, yeah, Boria ji, because main bach gaya na. Because of paralysis, main bach gaya. इसीलिए देखिए आपके साथ बात कर रहा हूं, मैं रियो जाके शॉर्टपुट में सिल्वर मेडल जीत सका, भारत के लिए ये कर सका. Can we even imagine what these people go through, what the stories are? And that's where I'm delighted for Dr. Batra. Rani Rampal, for 2 square meals a day, she played hockey. Neeraj Chopra, with that hand, if an Adil Sumariwala did not send him to Russia and other places, Mirabai Chanu to the United States. How did Mirabai Chanu take to weightlifting? She used to take logs on her head because they wanted to light the fire in winter in her village 22 kilometers from Manipur. And that's what Mirabai Chanu's story is. Her mother saw it and realized that this one can lift heavy logs, so she can be a weightlifter. I have not seen a country more unique than this. In Deepa's case, 4.61 meters in Rio, I thought was a revolution. I told Deepa and Devendra, you launched this book at the Jaipur Lit Fest. and they were crying. And I'm not fibbing here. They both were crying. And I said, why are you crying? And they said, sir, आप हमारे साथ क्यों लॉन्च करना चाहते हो? आप तो कोई भी अभिनव को बोलोगे, किसी को बोलोगे, वो आपका किताब लॉन्च कर देगा. I said, no, because it's a deep mission. And there were 1700 people in Charbagh. Each one of them were astonished to hear the stories. That's what I want the media to do. If you tell the right story, if you talk about these athletes, a Deepa Malik, a Vinod Kumar, who lost, by the way, that's where my anger is. What was the Indian official doing? Why did you not protest against the same evaluator who evaluated Vinod Kumar in Tokyo? Today he has lost his medal. We keep talking about mental health of Simone Biles. What is Vinod Kumar going through today after he has come back to India? Has the Indian officials even thought about that? Unfortunately not. You're busy clicking photographs. So that is also the story of India. My final point. You know, we keep talking and celebrating. Where we still need to get Dr. Chatterjee and my 3 wonder women. I'll add a 4th, a Manu Bhakar. We did not win a single medal in shooting. Why did we not win? Because there is no sports science still. And I'll tell you why. Today, the idea is in rapid fire pistol, you get basically 3 seconds to shoot. So if we think somebody is immensely talented, gun uthayega, boom, boom, boom. It doesn't happen like that. Unless you know your exhalation, inhalation, unless you know your body cycle, if you know sports science, if you condition your body in a manner that you will take 2.7, 2.8 seconds to shoot, you will never win. In Manu's case, and I've seen all the graphs, I've seen all the data. Every time Manu Bhakar took 2.7, 2.8, she was shooting 10.7, 10.8. You don't need the decimals in rapid fire, you need 10, but she was shooting that. One shot, she shot in 1.3 seconds. Instead of 3 seconds, she shot an 8. She missed the final by 2 points. Okay, that is the truth. Do we really know what Manu Bhakar is going through? Simone Biles was celebrated the world over. Manu Bhakar was called Nautanki. Manu Bhakar was abused, was trolled when she missed out on a medal. Avni Lekhara, our shooting gold medal winner, was told, "Scooter pe kya shooter banegi?" This is also the story of India. And that's what this book aims to counter.
I'm going to take you on one of the chapters that you've entitled Ad Hocism or Professionalism. How much do you think in sports we are moving from ad hocism to professionalism today?
Big time, because of these people. And I call these 2 people not because they're my friends. I actually think under Dr. Batra, corruption has lessened. I'm not saying it's gone, because Dr. Batra doesn't control all the federations. He doesn't. There are many federations I can name here which are corrupt to the core. But under him, people now know that if you do that, you will be pulled up. Under Adil Sumariwala, you know, I can name an athlete who in Rio got money from the top scheme. The same father syndrome happened. Nobody knew where the money went. The father actually was the coach. 1 crore 30 lakhs gone. There are many such stories. That has stopped now with an Adil, with a Dr. Batra. So, and also you've got to give credit to the government. If you really ask me where the credit is to the government and the top scheme. That's where the credit is. The money has come from there. There, the IOA, the Federation, the Sports Authority of India, they come together. And then the private foundations. Synergy is happening. That's where no 20 medals, Dr. Chatterjee, will ever happen because of individual effort or jugaad. This is systemic change. That's what gives me hope. That in Paris, I'm on record saying we will win 50 medals in Paris, 40 at least in para. Why? Because there are structures in place. There are systems in place. The same is happening with the Olympics. That's why this book. Finally, I am seeing systems. I've been talking Olympic sport for the last 25 years. Every time I do a cricket show, there are thousands and thousands of views. I do an Olympic show, no one watches. Now all that is changing. People are consuming Olympic sport. It has become a spectacle. That gives me hope about this country. When a Mohammad Siraj carries the flag at the Gabba as a Muslim fellow, unlike the toxic debates that I see at 9 p.m. primetime TV, and all of India marches behind him, that is my idea of India. When a 23-year-old Neeraj Chopra drapes himself in the tricolor, or a Mariappan Thangavelu drapes himself in a tricolor in Rio, that is my idea of India. That is why I celebrate sport. And my request is to media as well, do not treat sport as a silo. It is not a silo. That's why states need to take sport. Today, when Neeraj wins, you are bound, you are forced to put Neeraj Chopra on the front page. Why? Because he's national news. How many Bengalis, today you're doing it at the Bengal Club, how many Bengal journalists went to cover the Olympic Games? Me alone. And my friend Anilava Chatterjee who went with me. Nobody else. No one else went from Bengal. Why? Questions need to be asked. Are there no media organizations in Bengal? Will they not travel to the UAE for IPL? Will they not travel for the World Cup? They will. That's where questions need to be asked. Introspection needs to happen. Deep dive needs to happen.
I'm just going to ask you another thing that is very interesting that you bring up in your book, and that is the role of the army in nurturing talent. And the army seems to be well ahead of the civilian colleagues in this. What is your impression about what has the role of the army has played?
Was always the case. If you see the Army Sports Control Board, there is always a tradition, discipline, Rajavardhan Rathore coming from that. I mean, that's not a surprise actually. That has always been the case. Now, I mean, take a Jitu Rai, take that Mao training range in Kashmir, in Ladakh. Actually, you have proper sports facilities. Take the Army Sport, the Pune facility. You have lots of facilities, and the whole cult of ethicality and discipline is embedded in the army, and it's not surprising. But fundamentally, if there is a marriage between academia, sport, and of course that tradition that you talked about, that's where a revolution will happen. You need more Adil Sumariwalas to stand up and say, you know what, I'll protect my athlete. There will be breakdowns. We are celebrating everyone. How many of us are talking about the Deepak Punia, who was 6 seconds away from a medal? Dr. Batra was the one, the moment the girls lost, he called me and he said, Boria ji, paisa inko bhi denge. पैसा इनको भी देंगे, इनको इक्वल सेलिब्रेट करेंगे, आप बोल दो हम सेलिब्रेट करेंगे। फोर्थ हुआ तो क्या हुआ, रेवोल्यूशन हुआ है। That's the approach and attitude I want our sports administrators to show. Adil Sumariwala has never told me that Neeraj Chopra is priority. He is the only one I will go and click a picture with. He has not done that. He was the one who was giving the medal to Shaili Singh also. He has not done that. For him, all of your athletes, he mentioned Kamalpreet, are priority. When India as a country starts doing that, I think we will change.
One final question, Boria, about your book. If you have 2 take-home messages from your book to the Bengal Club audience, what would those 2 messages be?
Back Olympic sports, stop watching spectacles, don't follow medalists only. If you think medalists are the stories, then you are missing the point in entirety. For me, all my 54 Paralympic athletes are real life heroes. Celebrate them. Point number 1. Point number 2, and this is a borrowed line, an Olympic Games doesn't come every 4 years, it comes every day. Do not do a discussion and then do another 4 years later. Back Olympic sport every day, like you consume cricket or cinema or politics, because this is an aspect that will result in nation building. So don't wake up every 4 years, wake up every day.
Fantastic. And on that very, very optimistic note, we have just one question for the panelists that has come up. It's a very interesting question. It says, why in the Olympics do rankings depend on your gold medal tally? Because why should it not depend on your total medal tally? Because if it depended on our total medal tally, our position would have been 33 instead of 48. So why is it that we have to have the goal? You know, in an event where we say participation is the live wire and not winning, it is participating. Why do we have this very strange system that we evaluate ranks of nations depending on the number of gold medals they win rather than the number of total medals they win?
Batra?
Me?
Dr. Batra can answer. He's on the IOC.
No.
Dr. Batra should answer.
It's got nothing to do with IOC. The way I take it is that it goes by how many people finished on top in your country. So that's how it gets acknowledged. Gold comes with who finishes on top. So gold is a respect for that finishing. So how many, if 20 finishes top in your country and 30 finish second, so the top ones are given the acknowledgement who finished first. So that's how I think it gets the recognition. There is no factor where to say that 5 silver come to 1 gold. There is no such factor. Even if you are 1 gold, another one is 20 silver, you are still number 1. So that's how it's factorized. How you finish first. That's the way I have understood it. I don't know if Boria, I am just very junior to you, Professor Boria, so you can maybe add or enlighten me on that. That's the way I take it. That's the way I understand it.
We'll let Mr. Sumariwala in to answer that question.
No, I'm not going to answer that question. I think that's been a tradition by how it's done. But in athletics, we've done something different. We've done for all the 8 places. So you will get 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So all the 8 finalists would get a point depending on where they finish. So for World Athletics Championships, we do a math in that way, so that more and more countries can get points. So there are a lot of countries that do not win medals. So actually, India was the 101st country that ever got an Olympic medal. So we have 214 members. India became the 101st country with Neeraj's medal to have won a medal at the Olympic Games. So just to ensure that more people get points, we've been following that system. But it's just a system that we follow, or as Dr. Batra says, who's finished on top, and that's how they calculate. But I think we can calculate it either way. For example, China declared that they were the champions at these Olympics because they had more medals than the US overall. Actually, China went out and said, we are the Olympic champions. And that's a statement they put out. So, I mean, I don't care whichever way. I just think that either way is okay with me. I mean, I'm not very fastidious about which way you calculate. As long as your athletes do well, your athletes perform well, your athletes have repeated their best performance, then
well, I think Adil, by this way, you build up that competition structure that you want to be number 1, and you can be number 1 only if you get more golds. So that
fair enough. No, fair. I mean, I am not on. I'm not on either side.
You can get all the 300 plus bronze medals that are available in Olympics, and you can claim to be number 1. That doesn't serve. So it's
it's a fair point.
It is a zeal to be number 1. That's finish on the top. That's what is important for Olympics. I think that's the way it goes.
I think we end with this very promising suggestion that we should all aim for the top of the ladder. If we want to be counted, we'll have to get there. Fortunately, we have with us this evening 3 people who have made it to the top of their ladders. I seem to go down the snakes every time I try to get up there. But 3 individuals have done very well and got to the top of the ladder. And we really need to thank them for having spent 1 hour and 15 minutes of their very valuable time with us at the Bengal Club, though virtually. And thank you very much, Mr. Adil Sumariwala, Mr. Narendra Batra, and of course, Boria Majumdar, for making this evening possible. We've, I'm afraid, reached the end of our time. Thank you very much. And of course, we all would like to see both of you, in fact, all 3 of you physically at the Bengal Club at some point of time in the near future. And I just end by telling our audience at the Bengal Club that you would remember that there has been a mailer sent out to you by the Communications Subcommittee about contributing to your travel tales, stories of travels that you'd like to share with us, because that's going to be published at the end of this month. You just have a few more weeks to write.
Give me 20 more seconds. So travel tales, you said, Dr. Batra, me and Adil were on the same flight. Dr. Batra's number was 3030, mine was 3032, and Adil was 3031. So we enter Japan and we are given these slips where these numbers are written. These are our COVID test numbers. And then we are taken to this giant hall where the numbers are going to flash on the giant screen. So Dr. Batra's happens the fastest. He's off. Adil's happens, he's off. And after me, there are 2-3 people. Theirs happened, and I'm this fool sitting with my number not coming. So I almost lost nerve and was about to collapse. That's how my travel in Japan started during the Olympic Games.
Boria, just one message for you. You mentioned that in para, you expect about 40 medals in Paris. I would request that, you know, this media has a big hold and push. We really need development of para infrastructure.
Yeah.
You said that you participated in 8 or 9 sports. We need to have infrastructure for other sports also.
Correct.
Correct. I think this is something media needs to push. We are also pushing, but it's media's voice which is more effective than ours. So if you really need more medals, you need to have para infrastructure improved because it's not up to the mark.
It is not.
Yeah, I completely agree.
As a neurosurgeon, I could not agree more with you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
बोरिया autograph book.
मैं भेज दूंगा मैं भेज दूंगा